$1 trillion. Let that number settle in your mind. China just announced today, December 8th, the largest trade surplus in human history, $1 trillion, while American exports to China collapsed 29% in a single month. 29% collapse during a so-called trade truce. Ask yourself a direct question. When your adversary hits record profits while your exports are collapsing, who exactly won the trade war? I am John Mearheimer, and I will tell you the answer Washington refuses to admit. China won completely, decisively. This is not a trade statistic. What you are witnessing today is the transfer, the largest shift of economic power since America overtook Britain a century ago. My framework of offensive realism teaches one foundational truth. Economic power creates military power. The nation that produces more eventually dominates. More? Today's numbers confirm what I have warned for decades. America did just lose a trade war. America lost the economic foundation. Let me show you exactly how this happened. To understand this catastrophe, you must understand what Washington believed for 30 years. The old order in 2001, America welcomed China into the World Trade Organization. The assumption was simple. Trade prosperity would create democracy. China would become a responsible. The illusion, Washington believed China would remain permanently dependent on American consumers. That access to U.S. markets was irreplaceable, that China could never build alternatives. The structural shift. But three forces shattered these assumptions. First, manufacturing exodus. American corporations relocated factories to China. The United States hollowed its industrial base. China became the world's factory. Second, supply chain capture. China made itself indispensable pharmaceuticals, electronics, rare earths, critical components. All roads lead to Chinese factories. Third, market diversification. Belt and Road created a Chinese economic empire spanning 140 nations. America became optional. My framework of offensive realism predicted this outcome. Rising powers use economic strength to build military power. America funded China's rise, believing trade created a rival, the most formidable rival America has ever faced. Now let me describe exactly what happened today. The catalyst, China's trade surplus exceeded $1 trillion for the first time in history. This number shatters all previous records. It represents the largest accumulation of trade wealth any nation has ever achieved. But here is the devastating detail. Exports to the United States collapsed 29% in November alone. Despite the trade, despite negotiations, despite every tariff and threat Washington deployed, the players on one side, Trump claiming victory through tariffs on another, American farmers now requiring $12 billion in government bailouts to survive. Behind them, China pivoting successfully to and Latin America. The stakes for America. This represents lost market access, lost manufacturing capacity, and lost economic leverage for China. This represents complete independence from American markets. Beijing no longer needs American consumers. That dependency is finished. Here is my interpretation. Lord, this is not policy failure. Every dollar of that $1 trillion surplus is a dollar of American strategic weakness. Every percentage point of export collapse is a percentage point of influence surrendered. This was not a trade dispute. This was economic warfare. And America lost. The numbers announced today are not statistics. They are surrender documents written in economic data that cannot be disputed. Now let me explain why Washington's response failed completely. The first failure, tariff backfire. American consumers paid the tariffs through higher prices, not China. Every economic study confirms this. Tariffs functioned as taxes on Americans. Beijing felt minimal impact. The second failure, supply chain reality. America cannot replace Chinese manufacturing. Decades of outsourcing destroyed domestic production. You cannot rebuild factories with tweets. You cannot restore industrial capacity with threats. The third failure, market mathematics. China found new customers. America cannot find new suppliers. Brazil replaced American soybeans permanently. Southeast Asia absorbed Chinese exports. America rejected. The pivot happened. It is irreversible. The fourth failure, bailout dependency. $12 billion to farmers proves the policy created crisis rather than solved one. When your strategy requires government bailouts to prevent collapse, that strategy has failed. The illusion was that tariffs would bring China to its knees. The reality is that China hit record surplus while American exports collapsed. The illusion was that a trade truce demonstrated American leverage. The reality is that China agreed to nothing meaningful and continued winning. Identify this as a classic case of strategic self-deception. Washington believed threatening China would produce submission. It produced adaptation. Instead, an adaptation defeated every tariff, every threat, every negotiating tactic America deployed. American soybean farmers learned this lesson painfully. They lost the Chinese market permanently. Brazil replaced them. That market is never coming back. Now, let me show you what China understood. Strategic patience. While Trump tweeted threats, Beijing built alternative quietly, systematically, successfully. The Great Pivot. China reduced dependence on American markets from 20% of exports to under 15% and falling every year. America matters less. The Chinese trade. The first advantage, Belt and Road. 140 nations now exist within Chinese economic orbit. Infrastructure, investment, integration. Beijing built an alternative global. Second advantage, manufacturing supremacy. The world cannot function without Chinese production. This is not opinion. This is industrial reality. The third advantage, domestic consumption. 1.4 billion Chinese consumers are becoming China is building an economy that needs no one. Here is the rational calculation. Beijing realized the American market is not. America threatened. China adapted. Adaptation won. Sun Tzu wrote 25 centuries ago, "The supreme victory is breaking enemy resistance without fighting." China did not beat American tariffs. China made American tariffs irrelevant. Time is Beijing's weapon. Every year of trade war made China more independent, not less. So, what happens? Now, let me be direct. Immediate consequences. American farmers have permanently lost Chinese markets. Manufacturing continues its exodus eastward. Consumer prices remain elevated from tariffs. that punish Americans. $12 billion bailouts come dependency, long-term structural shift. The economic center of gravity is moving east. China is now the largest trading partner for most nations on Earth. The dollar's dominance faces gradual erosion as UN-denominated trade expands. My warning: economic power funds military power. The nation that produces more eventually conquers more. China now produces more than America in virtually every industrial category. The realist lesson: trade wars cannot be won by nations that surrendered manufacturing decades ago. Tariffs cannot restore industrial capacity. Threats cannot rebuild factories. Tweets cannot defeat a nation that manufactures everything while you manufacture nothing. The question is no longer whether America won the trade war. That question was answered today. $1 trillion answered it. The question now is whether Washington understands the magnitude of this defeat. China understood that economics is warfare. America still believes economics is politics. That fundamental misunderstanding cost America its economic future. And today's numbers prove that future is already the past. $1 trillion, 29% collapse. These are not statistics. This is the sound of power changing hands.